And my introduction is that I am Bob Matthews, and I'm a math guy and I'm a software guy, and I do some work with Adobe products for the job, but easily half or more of what I do with Adobe products is just for my own use. One of the things that I wrote for the description, that if you read the email that was sent out, I think it's easier if you're learning something new, like mobile apps. I'm assuming not many of you have used more than one or two of Adobe mobile apps, if any. Um, so if you're new to something like that, the easiest way to get started with it is to hear or watch or read just a little bit about it, and then just take off on your own and just use it. One thing Ken suggested last month for learning Photoshop is to take a photo and just destroy it with, using all the little adjustments and everything you can do to it, do it. And you don't destroy it anyway, but it's a good way to describe it. And you can do the same thing with these mobile apps. So I've got the Adobe User Group website up. Donna normally makes an advertisement about that, but I'll do it. There's a Facebook group as well. There's a Facebook group. It's getting a new cover photo, so watch for that. Check it every day, see if the new photo's up. Yeah, and you'll be glad you did. There are, let me just leave that up as I introduce the topic. There are over a dozen mobile apps that Adobe puts out. We're going to cover a dozen of them tonight, some of them, of course, in more detail than others. But they come and go. Like some of you, I know at least two of us. If the rest of you were there, I don't really remember who was there and who was not. But when Adobe did the Dog and Pony Show for the Creative Cloud 20, whatever it was, the second revision of the Creative Cloud, they had a big Dog and Pony Show at one of the nice restaurants on Lake Austin, and they showed a lot of these mobile apps there. And I can think of two or three or four of them that they just demonstrated that night that either have just gone away or they've been incorporated into other apps. For example, the first one I'm going to show tonight is called Capture, and that's a combination of four previous Adobe mobile apps. But that's what happens. And when that happens, by the way, let me just say this. If you're worried about losing some work that you created with a particular app, when an app goes away, you don't have to uninstall it, and it's not immediately. It's not taken off your mobile device ever unless you take it off. It's just the developer quits updating. That's the only effect. So you're welcome to keep that app on there, and as long as it will work on the updated operating systems, you can continue to use it.
Can you download a copy if you lose it?
As long as it's continued, if it's still on the store, yes. Either the Google Store for Android apps or the iPhone App Store for iOS, iPhones and iPads. Yeah, you can keep that. And there's not a limit on the number of devices. Like on my Apple account, I've got three devices on that I use. My grandson's got an iPad, my wife's got an iPad and an iPhone. All of those can download the same apps for no additional cost. So that's just the way that works. I assume I don't have any Android apps, but I assume the Google Store operates exactly the same way. They don't charge extra for multiple devices. But that's just a guess on my part. So the first thing I want to do is get into Adobe Capture, and I have to share my iPad screen to do that.
By the way? How do you share
That's a good question. I have an app called It's a mobile app as well as the companion software for my desktop, my laptop. It's called Reflector 3, and they have a Mac version and a PC version, and so this is Reflector. And when you install it, it just shows up. You see the screen mirroring options right there. Well, no, you don't. I do. But oh, there it is. So if I want to go back to the PC screen, I can go stop mirroring, and then you see the PC screen. So I'll just mirror it, and we'll go to the application. And this is Adobe Capture. And so the first thing you're going to see is my library. But what that is a source for. And yeah, I'm clicking on it. Or I should be tapping it. That's a source for the images that you use in Capture. And by the way, I'm using an Apple Pencil here, which is kind of a neat deal, but it just helps you make fine lines and more accurate selections when you're using this. But the things that I'll be doing, like for photo selections and so on, a finger works. It's just the pen works better. So if you can read that, which you can't because I'm looking at it and I can't even read that. But up below where it says My Library, over on the left it says Shapes. And let me just see if I can change the resolution. It might make a difference here. If I stop mirroring, and if I go to what I think is the native resolution for that projector, I think it's gonna show up better. It'll be smaller, but you'll be able to read it. So there's my grandson next to the Amtrak there. Okay, so see how that works. No difference, zero difference. Well, there are 6 things at the top. You can maybe read. This first one says shapes, then it says type, colors, materials, patterns, and brushes. Like I said, this is a combination of 4 previous apps, but what you create in Capture, you can use in other Adobe apps, both mobile and computer-based. And that's, in general, true for about probably 9 out of these 12 apps I'm describing tonight. So what is this all for? I mentioned the 6 modules, the shapes, which is what's there. Its total purpose in life is to create vector shapes from photos. So if I wanted to use that, I could go to my library or downloads. Here we go. I can use that one and create a vector image. And in fact, this was a color photo that I downloaded from Adobe Stock. Several of the things I'm going to be doing tonight are from Adobe Stock. So this was a color photo. I brought it into Capture and did the magic and made a vector image.
What is a vector image?
Yeah, I intended to do that, so thanks. I would have forgot had you not mentioned that. You hear 2 terms, or 3, but 2 of them are the same. You hear the term vector, and you hear the term raster, and you hear the term bitmap. Well, raster and bitmap are the same thing. And what raster and bitmaps are, the picture would be comprised of little pixels, millions of pixels generally, just a little dot. A pixel is a dot. So dot, 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 dot. All of those black things are dots, and color one would be comprised of different colored dots. Whereas a vector image, one of the characteristics of the 2 types of images is if you scale a vector image, say 10 times its normal size, it's going to be exactly as sharp and crisp as it was when it was small. Whereas a bitmap image, if you scale it 10 times the normal size, unless it was huge to begin with, you're going to see a lot of degradation. Fuzziness, you'll see noise, you'll see pixelation, you'll see a lot of things that are not good, and almost nothing that is good. except a bigger image. But the way vector images work is it's mathematical. The description inside the code of the image says, okay, start here and make this kind of curve to get over here, and then when you get there, make a straight line down to here, and that's a vector image. So it's lines. And if you're typing in Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or Pages or any type of product like that, you're using vector concept when you type the type, because you can scale that type to any size you want to, and it's not going to lose its clarity. That's the same thing with vector image. So that's what the Shapes module of Adobe Capture does. The next module is called Type, and this is kind of a cool deal to be able to have locally. Several iterations ago, one thing that was introduced into Photoshop, one of the features is to match type. It's in the type menu, and you go down, you go, okay, match font. And if you've got some lettering in an image, as long as it's not all fuzzy and if it's easily readable, Photoshop will do a reasonable good job of matching that type in the photo to a font. And they'll say, oh, it's this font here, and if that one doesn't work, try this one, or it'll give you a choice of maybe a dozen or more. And if you've got the Creative Cloud, part of that is Typekit, which lets you synchronize fonts you don't have to pay extra for them. You get 100 with the standard Creative Cloud license. And you can unsync them and sync them as you need them or not need them. So you don't have to be using all 100 at once. But what this does, it does essentially what I just described. You can load an image into Capture. You can say, okay, I want you to tell me what font this is, and it'll do it. Colors. This is totally something I could use. I mean, I haven't, because I haven't done any design projects, but Sherry mentioned she was into design, and somebody else said you're a graphic designer, Viola. So I'm not. I mean, I love colors, and I can look at those and see those are complementary colors. They go well together. But if I was looking at a color chart or a color wheel, I wouldn't be able to pick out 5 colors that went together like this. And so that's the purpose of the color module within Adobe Capture. It will choose 5 colors for you if you're developing a website or a logo or something for your business or your website. It'll choose complementary colors that won't make people look at it and go, oh man, and then click off of it. So that's not what you want. You do want colors that look well together. So that's the purpose of that. Materials is, if I were using this would be the least useful to me, because I don't work in 3D. I mean, I like watching 3D, but I don't ever do anything with 3D and make 3D creations. But the purpose of this is it'll make a 3D materials from an image. So you see that 3D ball right there. If the image was good enough, it could have made a 3D ball out of a 2D picture of a ball. So that's what that's for. Patterns. Now this one is something I want to show you tonight. So let me turn on the lights to do this. Yeah, but see, I'm taking a picture of this group there, and now you see over in the, you can turn it back off. So what you see in the center, that's, oh, there you go, it's on the right now. That's the photo that this pattern is made from. And if I were to, well, in fact, I'll go ahead and do this. I'll save it, and then I'm going to just name it Pattern 1, save it to Downloads. Okay, there we go. And the next thing I want to do is I want to open this in Photoshop. So let me go.
Is that really us?
Excuse me?
Is that really us?
It really is. Yes. So if I go, well, there we go. I had to get to the right screen because I didn't see my share icon over here in the lower left. That's what I was looking for. So it'll tell you what your share options are. Uh, share, share pattern link. There we go. Well, somewhere, share to. Grumpy Cat. There we go. Let's just go to Photoshop Express. There we go. So that's my pattern, and I could zoom into that and just change whatever it is you change in Photoshop Express.
Using an iPad?
Yeah, this is an iPad Pro, a 10-inch iPad Pro with a Apple Pencil. So let me go back to Capture, and there's one more, and that's brushes. And if you've done much work with Photoshop and Illustrator particularly, you know at least what brushes are, and whether you've used them or not is another thing. But what you know brushes to be, that's exactly what this is for. You can create a brush for those applications right here in Capture. So I mentioned Photoshop and Illustrator. The third place you might want to use it is the app called Draw, which I'm going to cover just in a little bit. So, which actually next. From Photos? No. Let me go back here. So it says, turn your strokes and objects into a digital brush. So let's just.
What does it say underneath that? Use these brushes. Or what does it say underneath that? Turn your strokes into objects. It's just my screen.
Well, there we go. It says use these brushes in Adobe Photoshop. It says exactly what I just said. Yeah, the same thing. So when you go create, you come to this screen and you can create it from a photo, which would be a little weird. There's a brush created from the photo of this. So yeah, the answer to your question is yes. I said no at first, but clearly you can do that. We just did. You know what? I think when we're through here, I think it's going to be a vector. Does anybody know the answer to that? I mean, brushes, are they normally vectors?
They can be both of them.
Yeah.
I know Photoshop that they're raster based, but I don't know that they're vector based.
Yeah. So anyway, you could go to styles, select the brush style, and you can get several different ones to choose from. This kind of style, and you got presets. Like several Adobe apps have presets. Well, this one is, same thing too. You can go directional, initial, you can go none, angle, and so on. Refine. Okay. I don't want to get real accurate with it, but you
Close loop thinking with it, like you draw a circle and it's in end, but it's completed as a, like a donut?
I don't think so. No.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, she asked if I were using this brush and I made some kind of closed loop, whether it was a circle or an oval or just some kind of oddball shape. If I ended up exactly where I started, is it going to mesh? Is it going to look like just one big thing? Not necessarily, but I don't think it's going to be far off from that. I think it'll look pretty nice. All right, so let's go on to the next one, which is Adobe Draw, and this is a companion app to the Illustrator CC. So whatever you do in Illustrator, you can do a lot of that here. I'm not even going to try to say you can do exactly the same thing here as you can in Illustrator. Otherwise, it'd be the same product. You can't do the same thing, but you can get close. But what I mentioned already, I'm going to mention again because it's worth mentioning again. The beauty, I think, of these mobile apps, like you saw the Photoshop app that I'm going to come back to in a little bit. The beauty of apps like that is you can do work on your mobile device, like when you're just sitting doing something away from your computer. And when creativity strikes, you're not always going to be in front of your computer. And so it's good to be able to even start a new project here and pick it up on your computer. Or you can do it the other way around.
How do you do that? You send it to your computer and email it to yourself?
They have sync built into it. And in fact, if you go, yeah, let me go to settings. If I go to settings, preferences, somewhere, anyway, I don't want to spend a lot of time looking for it, but you can turn on and off sync, but the default is to have it on, so it's going to automatically sync, and it's not going to sync to everything. Like the work I do here is not going to automatically sync to Lightroom because it's not the kind of thing you work with in Lightroom.
Right.
It's going to sync to Illustrator.
Right.
So you can, in fact, the links on these mobile apps that say open in, like I'm going to do that when I get to the Photoshop on here, and let me just see. Did you know press and hold inside an enclosed area to fill the shape? Well, that's good to know. Mm-hmm. Those tips are, and you can turn those tips off too. But if you like them, then do it. Here's the share app. If I want to open that in see Adobe Desktop Apps, open in. I can open it in Photoshop, I can open it in Illustrator. And if I tap that, and if Illustrator's not running on my computer, as long as I'm here, then it's going to open it. If I'm at the airport or somewhere and my computer is in my office, you're going to say open in Illustrator and it's not going to be able to do it. But that's assuming that you're connected. And so what I've got here, it's really faint. But I've got an image that I downloaded from Adobe Stock, and this is the image layer you see in the middle and the draw layer on top. And the image layer, I've set the opacity down. See, that's the original image right there. And I've set the opacity down because what I want to do is I want to go to the draw layer and trace over that and make my own little vector drawing, a hand drawing from that image. Now, this is something that I'm not able to do, but I mean, it's something that somebody using this reasonably would do. And you see the brushes over on the left, and you got pressure sensitive screens on the iPad Pros, and so there's a lot you can do with this, and the more you use it and the more you practice with it, the better you're going to be, just like anything. So the next thing I want to do is this one. I'm not going to spend much time on this at all, but this is Adobe Scan, and there are probably, if you look in the App Store, whether it's iTunes App Store or the Google App Store, you're going to find probably 20 or 30 apps that let you scan things with your mobile device camera, and it'll turn them into PDFs. So that's the whole purpose of this scan. So Don, would you turn the lights just for a minute while I do this? I'm going to make a scan of this recipe for, there we go, Thai curry vegetable soup there. Yeah, and that's it. It'll come up. Yeah. No, it is good. Actually, I made this 2 nights ago. It's awesome. Now, there's a little delay. See, I've been sitting with it in my lap for several seconds already. There it is. And the scan looks about, it enhances the scan for PDF. And see, that actually looks pretty good, but there are controls. If I click if I click the pencil at top, I can change the title. That's not going to let me change the image, but I can change. Down at the bottom, I can change it. Yeah, it will. It will, if you open it in, yeah, either Acrobat Pro or Acrobat DC, either way. So anyway, I'm going to just save PDF and we're good. That's all. That's scanned. And of course, there's Quick Car and Lube. I got my receipt scanned. So there's all kind of uses for scanners that make PDFs. The next one, I'm going to turn it back to landscape. The next one is, oops, I went to Photoshop Fix. I meant to go to Photoshop Express here. Now, one of the things that they added to this app, I don't know, a year ago, 18 months ago, I lose track of time sometimes, but it defaults, unless you've used it recently, it'll default to the option that says Make Collage at the top. Over on the left, there's Edit Images, and over on the right, there's Make Collage. So if I want to make a collage, I see some jellyfish right there. I want to make a collage out of these jellyfish images there. Let's use those three. And if I go next, it's in the lower right corner, kind of hidden over there. There we go, next, and there's my first, there's the suggestion, but you got all these layouts and grids, and you could just go crazy here, wasting a lot of time playing with this thing. But as you're doing it, you're learning, so it's not time wasted, I don't think, by any means. So edit images, and let me just take this image that I created tonight. Now, there's some deep in thought there, and anyway, there's not if you don't, even if you don't use Photoshop on the computer, everybody in this room, I'm sure, has at least seen it, and it can be really intimidating. There's so many things you can do with it, so many controls, so many presets, so many of these macros that some people call actions, but this is much less intimidating. You can do a lot of the good stuff in here that you'll do with Photoshop, like crop, and you got, again, many choices. Standard ratios, you can do freeform. Let's just, there we go, do that. And we got the sliders here. We're going to do highlights. We're going to cut down the highlights. We're going to come up the shadows. And, you know, the point is you can really make some decent adjustments on your photos right here. And then when you're finished, take that and you say, I want to send to either Lightroom or Photoshop. So let's just go to Photoshop right here. So the upload has started. And in order for us to see it, I'm going to have to stop mirroring so I can open Photoshop. It does if it's not open, but I had it open already to save time. Now, as this is trying to think of what it wants to do, let me make a disclaimer here by saying that my synchronization hasn't been working quite right on some things on my PC. It works great on my Mac, but I don't want to bring my Mac tonight because the apps in general for mine work better on PC. But you see, there it is. And whatever changes I make here, once I save and close it, they should be taken right back to the app they started from on your mobile device. But that's one of the things that's not working quite right on mine. So it doesn't do it like it should because my sync is off a little bit. Whatever changes you made on the computer to that photo, it'll take it back to the app that it was sent there from. Oh yeah, I was trying to think of what it was I was going to say. What I was going to say was I mentioned Adobe Stock earlier. The same thing's true about Adobe Stock images in whatever application you're using them in. If you can download, you can look and search for an image on Adobe Stock and find one, and you could download a proof, and it'll say Adobe Stock right across the front, which is fine because all you want to do is see if it's going to work for your project. And once you find one that does work for your project, you go back to the Adobe Stock site and license the image, take it off your account, and you say, okay, now I've got 430 instead of 431 because I won 10 Adobe Stock images 12 times in a row at Adobe user group meetings. But the point is, once you license it, then you go back to the app you're using it in, and after it synchronizes, the watermark's gone, and you get the full resolution image. Because the proof is not by any means full resolution. It's a small. It's big enough to work with, but it's small compared to the one you really get later. So I don't want to do a lot right now. I'll come back to Photoshop Express if I have time later on. But I want to say right now that the next two apps we're going to cover, Photoshop Fix and Photoshop Mix, is sort of feel like Cornelius, the rapping. I'm the rapping app guy now. So Photoshop Fix and Photoshop Mix, really, they don't do, well, I don't want to say they don't do anything that Photoshop Express doesn't do, but the lion's share, probably 90%, if not more, of what you can do in Photoshop Fix and Photoshop Mix, you can do in Photoshop Express. So why would you choose, for example, this next one, Photoshop Fix? Why would I choose to make the adjustments, and it'll come up in a minute as soon as I synchronize it. Why would I choose to make adjustments in Photoshop Fix if Photoshop Express does the same thing? And the answer is you have a choice, and that's really the best answer. You choose what's working best for you, and if you'd rather work in Photoshop Express, well, then that's your choice, and you choose that. But for me, it's simpler if all I'm going to be doing is taking out a few strands of hair and maybe taking off a pimple off of this woman's forehead. It's going to be easier to do it in Photoshop Fix because I'll get in and out quicker. So that's the advantage to me. So you would have to decide what the advantage to you would be, and maybe there is no advantage. You just choose whatever you like to choose that day. So as the name of this app suggests, Photoshop Fix, it's for fixing things that you'd like to change. Maybe you're looking at that photo, let me just choose that one, and you're thinking, I don't see anything wrong with that picture. And that's fine, because art is so much subjective anyway. What I like in a photo and what you like in a photo, I guarantee you are going to be different. You might want to remove all the grain look of that, and somebody else might go, wait a minute, the grain just adds character to it. Okay. Fine. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a good point, and actually, let me go back to.
Does this have layers, or would the changes be destructive?
Excellent question, because the answer is what you'd want to hear. It's all non-destructive on these. I thought I had that app in here, but I don't. So I'm not app, but photo.
Well, that'd be good, because if you have images on your phone that are raw, then
Yeah. And she mentioned raw. Let me just say, you might have heard that term before, raw. What in the world does raw mean? I've heard it. I know what JPEGs are, but raw, I don't even know that, so I don't think I'm going to use it. Well, if you take a JPEG with your camera, or if you download a JPEG from the internet, or wherever you get a JPEG from, if that's a photo, there's already been some correction made to it. Whether it's color correction, or even if there's no correction at all to the image, there's some kind of scrunching algorithm to make it smaller. So there's loss of quality. And the raw is whatever the camera sensor sees, that's what's in a raw photo. There's no corrections been made to it. There's no compression algorithm been applied to it. Nothing. And so you look at a JPEG on your computer, and well, for example, when I take images, take shots with my DSLR, I have it set so that each snap of the shutter produces one JPEG and one RAW. And there's several reasons I do that I won't go into. But if I compare the sizes of those, once I put them on my computer, I look at a JPEG and it might be like 2200K. And I look at the same RAW for that one, it'll be like 10 times that size. You know, maybe 22 meg or something crazy like that. And wow, okay, good reason to save JPEGs. And early when I started doing the RAW shooting, I go, okay, I'm through with this RAW now. I'm going to delete it. And I came back years later wishing I hadn't done that. So anyway, you live and learn. But let me just show you a little bit of what this will do. And I'm going to start off by taking away a couple of those stray hairs. And like I mentioned earlier, I can do this with a finger. And if I'm using the finger to do that, first thing I'm going to do is zoom in with a little finger pinch right there. And down on the bottom, you probably can't read those, but the controls you have are crop, adjust, liquefy, healing, smooth, light, color, paint, defocus, vignette. See, all those things you can do in Photoshop Express. There's not anything down there except liquefy that you can't do in Photoshop Express. You can do liquefy in Photoshop CC on the computer, but not on Photoshop Express on the iPad. So what I want to do now is healing, and you see over on the left the size of the brush and the hardness of the brush. So I'm going to make it a fairly small. So what I'm doing is I'm tapping that and I'm moving my pen up and down to make the size change. You can do the same with hardness. I'll tap it and move it up, slide it up to make it harder, slide it down to make it softer. And the soft brush is just going to blend more of the surrounding pattern into that correction. But the thing you want to do is you want to try it and see how well it works. And if it doesn't work very well, then you go back and you change the hardness or whatever. And I'm looking at that and I'm going, well, it would have been better to have a bigger brush for one thing, but you can also go back and do it again. And once you start going over it again, you can see where you've done it the first time. See? And there's unlimited undo. If I click undo once, twice, 3 times a lady, there you go. There it is. There we go. So I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger and a little bit harder too, because yeah. Now, the technique I would use if I was on the computer that I can't do on the iPad is that hair is really, really straight. And if you're on Photoshop on the computer, you click once on one end, you go to the other end and hold the shift button and click again, and Photoshop will do the whole thing for you. You don't have to take your mouse and get it exactly straight. Photoshop will make it straight for you. That's a really neat feature. Well, there we go. Okay, that one's gone. I'll come back and get this one. Come back and get this one. There we go. Okay, that's enough for those, and I'm going to get this one over here off of her hair, and then this one. And then I'll zoom back out a little bit. And there's one I really wish I would have gotten, so I'm not going to zoom in to get that one. Let's just get it right here. And there we go. But, whoops, I meant to pinch to zoom, and but what I would like to do now is lighten her face a little bit. So let me go. If I don't click the check mark in the lower right, those changes are not saved. So I'm going to click the check mark. Changes are saved. And now I want to go adjust, because I want to adjust the shadows. There's a couple ways to do this. Most anything you do, I think Ken mentioned this when he did his last one. No matter what you do, there's more than one way to do it. I would say that almost absolutely. It's probably not absolute, but it's so close that it may as well be absolute. So really what I'm doing now is adjusting the shadows, but you see what I'm doing as I move that slider, it's not just her face that gets lighter, it's the background that gets lighter. And I don't really want the background to get lighter. So let me see if, well, I'll just X out of that. I don't have to worry about the changes being saved. If I go light, I go lighten, darken, structure. Structure is kind of an automatic. Whenever you see that magic wand looking thing, there we go. I see this is a little behind. When you see that magic wand looking thing with the sparkles on the end, you know what that's going to be. That's a combines a lot of different changes all at once in automatic. And up in the upper left is a pretty standard icon that is probably too small for you to see, but if I tap it and hold it, it's going to show me the original before this last round of changes, and when I release, it'll show me this with the changes. So without and with, and I think it's a little too contrasty with the changes. And
Was that just real time? I didn't see any change.
they were so small that once they're projected, it really takes a lot out of that. Some of these do well. All of these do exactly probably what you think they do. Paint, exactly what you would do with any paintbrush on Photoshop. Liquify. You mentioned making her nose bigger or smaller. Well, I can do the same thing here. Select one of the face nodes to change a facial feature. It says adjust a facial feature. All right, so if I want to do that and adjust the width, see, make her nose bigger. I can make her nose smaller. There you go. All right, Sherry, let's go with that one. You like that one? All right, let's go with that one. Yeah. Okay. Now, you could get into trouble by, I don't mean real trouble, like not going to jail kind of trouble. But if this is a friend of yours and you're messing with the image of her, she'd go, wait a minute, what's wrong with my nose the way it was? And if you start taking off blemishes and stuff, you tell me I'm ugly? What? I did that the first time I did that. These two friends of mine, both happened to be women. I took a shot of them at a conference. They were leaning against the table, looking over their shoulder at me. So I was taking from the backside, and I showed them this digital photo, and I says, "What do you think of this? I think it looks pretty good." And they says, "Yeah, you could take about 25 pounds off of us." And so I did. I made their butt smaller and gave it back, showed them the next day, and I says, "Does this look any better?" "Oh no, it looked like a cow on the first one." You cannot win. So, I mean, if this is a model and she signed a release and you have the right to do what you want to do with this picture, then by all means tear it up and sell it however you want. But I'm just saying, word to the wise there. Okay, so I want to say the last thing I want to do with this before we go to Photoshop Mix. I want to save to my library.
Things are not destructive.
They are, yeah, and I'm getting ready to do that. And you can't read the choices, but let me just go down the list from top. You can recognize the icons, I'm sure. The first one is save to my camera roll locally on my iPad. I can send to Photoshop CC. I can save to Lightroom. And the difference in send and save, subtle difference. It's really not the same, even though it sounds like it. Contribute to Adobe stock. So if this was my photo that I had taken and I wanted to upload it to Adobe stock, I could do that right from here. Save to my CC library, so it would be synced to everything that I've got access to CC. Instagram, Facebook, published project. The next to last thing, if you don't recognize the VE, that's Behance. Behance is one of the Adobe websites where if you are a designer or a photographer or an artist or any of those creative type of things, which I'm not much of, but if you want to create a portfolio in Behance and make it public, and people will come and they'll comment on it and so on and so on and so on, you still maintain the rights to all of it. You're not giving it away for people to download and use. I mean, it's still yours. You're just putting it there to show it off. You can do that. There's no charge for that. And the last one is share. Like if you want to share by email, you want to get a link, you want to, whatever you want to do. So right now, I'm going to.
Are you reading off of that menu?
Yeah, the menu that you can't read the labels on that I just read. I just read those to you. The ones you can't see, I can see just fine. So if I send to Photoshop CC, it's uploading the file, and when it gets there, okay, you probably didn't see that, but the last thing before the check mark, it said rendering to PSD. So you know what a PSD is? Yep, that's Photoshop's native format, and so I thought I stopped mirroring. Oh, it'll come. Be patient. Patient grasshopper. Oh, there we go. Well, no. Well, while this is coming up, or coming off, whatever, the next one we're going to do is Photoshop Mix. And just like Photoshop Fix had a really descriptive title, Photoshop Mix is pretty descriptive too. It's where you can make composite photos. You can take parts of this photo or all of it, put it over another one or under it, or layer it however you want, and it'll all be layers. You can select two or more of them, blend them together, and there's different blend modes, and you can adjust the feathering of the edge and so on. And it will also save to the library as a CC, PSCC, as a PSD. So this thing, I might need to just close this because my reflector app might have got frozen. Reflector 3. Well, sorry folks. We're closed for 2 weeks. Yeah, it'd be a good time for a break if you want. Yeah. Way to go, Sharon. Thanks. Okay, come back in 10 minutes. Okay, so the only thing I want to show you here is, and you probably can't see it, but this is a PSD. This is new project 2018. It's got a date. It says PSD. And so whatever changes I make here, again, just like the other one, when I close it, save the changes, it's going to go back to the app that it came from, Photoshop Fix. And I don't want to wait for that to happen. So let's just go on to the next app. All right. We might have taken care of the lag in the screen. So this is Photoshop Mix. And so you see I've got a couple of photos there, blue bonnets photos, one of which has a bumblebee and one of which has my grandson. And so what I want to do is I want to take this, and if I zoomed in really well, and if I was, what that says is drag the layer to snap it to the border. Okay. They're just full of hints for you, and sometimes they get in the way, sometimes they're pretty useful. Down at the bottom, I see my options are adjust and looks. What in the world is looks? Well, it's basically presets. If you're familiar with Lightroom and Photoshop presets and profiles, that's exactly what this is. Normal, natural, portrait, and so on. Vivid look. So I don't use those too much, but they are a quick way to get a lot of coordinated adjustments with the one click. So if you like that, you can do it. Cut out, blend, and cutout would be if I want to take that bumblebee, which I'm going to do in a minute, take it from here and put it on top of my grandson's head. And then if you've done selections in Photoshop, you know one of the things you can do is after you make a selection, there's generally things that are maybe either too selected or not selected enough. You need to select a little bit more here and there. You can refine that selection, in other words. And down here, one of the options at the bottom is refine. So you can do that here as well. Certainly not with as much control as you can in Photoshop CC, but you can do that. So let's see how well auto does. Now looking at that, and selections work best against contrast. So if I'm trying to make a selection of that bumblebee, do you think there's enough contrast to make a good automatic selection, or you don't think that's going to work?
Not where I can find the wing.
Yeah, wings might be like.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work very well, but let's just, if I tap that, you see what's selected there. Well, that was smart. If I go auto, yeah, I don't like that.
If anything, so
Well, yeah, a little bit. You can tell a little bit of the body right there.
You could do a checkerboard.
Yeah, yeah. So let me go cut out again, and I don't want that. So if I go smart, see, smart selection isn't doing too bad.
so you're drawing
Are
it?
you drawing that or is it?
No, I'm doing that with the pen, the Apple pen. So that's not too bad. So if I go to refine and I go feather it, and I'm going to go edges and smooth edges, and there's an option to invert, but I don't want to select the other things. So now, if I go basic, I can go eraser and take a size down there, and then I can erase those parts that I don't want. Okay, not bad. And make it a little bit smaller so I can take that off. All right, that's good enough. Okay, so there we go. So if I go tap the plus, I'll go image, and on my iPad, well, let's just, well, yeah, the blue bonnet picture cannot be opened. Well, no, see, it's here, right. Yeah, I didn't want a new composition. So let me do this. If that's a pure Control C option. If I'm on the computer, Control C, Command C. So what happens if I do this? Oh, that's not it. Share image. Nope, that ain't it. There we go. And no, it's not what I wanted. Well, I know. All right. Here's what I'm going to do. If I go here, and I'm going to say save to camera roll. All right. See, I knew there was a way. Where there's a Willie, there's a way, and you don't need money. It's just a little bit of money. You've been in Austin a long time. You know Willie Kasuric.
Oh, yeah.
Willie Kasuric back in the 70s had those commercials. He had an appliance store, and that was his motto. You don't need money, just a little bit of money. And where there's a Willie, there's a way. Okay. All right. So now I got it. So there he is. And so these are layered, and the bumblebee's on the bottom. So I'm going to tap that and move it around to the top.
How did you get the bumblebee?
When I saved my grandson photo, and then I brought it in by importing it from the camera roll, since it wouldn't let me go from one Photoshop Mix project to another one. Oops. Yeah, I know. Okay. Yeah, I think that's. Oh, man. Where's the. Yeah, all right. So now. That tickles. Yeah, I see the lag time is back. All right. So that's where I want it. And so if I go save, I can save the camera roll. And now if I view my camera roll, of course I got to find it first. Creative Cloud, Grumpy Cat Weather. No. Okay. Let's go back to where I know it is then. Here we go. And there it is. So he's got it. He's got the big line of sunlight right through his eyes, but he's got a bumblebee on top of his head. And you know, I would suggest two things. Number one, it's not as refined as it would have been had I done the whole thing in Photoshop, but neither did it take me as long as it would have had I done the whole thing in Photoshop. So I'm trading off my time, which is worth a good little bit when I could be, you know, reading some kind of scary book to this guy, or, you know, doing something else, going down the slide with his 3-year-old sister. But you guys didn't come here to see grandson. Wait a minute, you did come here to see grandkid pictures. My mistake. Okay, Lightroom CC. If you were here, and I think most of you were, for my presentation, I think in November on Lightroom presets. You know, we talked about Lightroom CC and Lightroom Classic and so on, and what the differences are and so on. But how these photos get there is, well, a couple of ways. You see on the bottom right, I can put them in there from my camera roll, or I can take a picture with my iPad camera directly, and it'll go directly into Lightroom CC here on the iPad. That's not the normal way for me to get them in there. If that's a workflow that works for you, then that would be the normal way for you to get them in. But the normal way for me to get them in is from Lightroom Classic on the computer. You create a collection, and when you create a collection, you can set that collection to sync with Lightroom Mobile. And when you do, all the changes you make to those photos on Lightroom CC are reflected on the same photos on Lightroom Mobile here on the iPad, and vice versa. So let's take a look at these Bluebonnet pictures here, and here's one I want to adjust. Just random people. I was out taking Bluebonnet pictures, and these people were there. So there, they didn't mind if I took the picture. So you can see those are actually labels you can read: profile, light, color, effects, detail, geometry, optics. A lot of adjustments you can make right here. And so you would look at that. If you're seeing this for the first time, you would go, that's a pretty capable photograph correction tool. You know, whatever I want to do to process my digital photos, this would do it all. And mostly it does. But there's some adjustments that you can make better on the computer. What profile is, it combines a lot of adjustments, like I mentioned, for profiles before. There's ones called Adobe Color, Adobe Landscape, Adobe Standard, Camera Matching, and so on. So let's just get out of that. And light is exactly the corrections you would expect to be under light: exposure, contrast, highlights and shadows, and so on. Effects, clarity, dehaze, vignette. And the dehaze is one that we covered back in November. And let me just move that from, see if I go all the way down to dehaze and all the way up to dehaze, you see it really makes some radical changes there. If I double click the name, right now to get it back to 0, I double click the name dehaze and it went back to 0. So that's a good way if you're just playing with things to get it back there. But the other thing, midpoint feather roundness, those are grayed out, not available right now. Grain, I can increase the grain and so on. So I'm not going to go through every one of these, but you can see there are a ton of corrections you can make. Geometry is changing the orientation of the photo. Is it upright? Do I need to move it a little bit? Is the horizon level, and so on? And then optics, enable lens corrections. It knows what camera took this photo, and it has, and seems like they're updating this. Every update to Lightroom and Photoshop has some camera corrections in it. Every one of them, without exception. So they have a pretty good database of cameras and lenses and the corrections that need to be made for optics and whatever else, lighting. And so if you want those corrections to be made, then tap that, and it's the only option you have is either on or off. It knows this was taken with a particular Canon and particular lens that was on the Canon and so on. So that's you don't need any other option than that. But what I want to do is, since my daughter and her daughter have a little bit of shadow in them because her face is blocking the sun from my granddaughter there, I would like to increase the brightness of the shadows. But if I do that, see, let me go back to light, and see, you see the shadows are all the way up at 100%. So I can't increase the shadows and have that come up. I can increase the exposure, but then I don't know. That's not any good. I don't want to do that. So that none of those things are really an option. But this next thing I'm going to show you is something they just introduced. I mean, like within the last 2 weeks. The updates that came out, I don't know, when the 1st of April or whenever it was, introduced this feature. And that is selective edits. And that's what that label right up here says now, selective edits, now that I tapped this little sunlight looking thing over on the right. So the first thing to do is, stop it. Let's see. So I chose selective edits, and I want to go light. And if I go plus, this lets me choose where I want that correction to be made. See, I don't have any options yet because I don't have a selection made. Lightroom doesn't know where to apply the selection to. So which brush do I want? I want a fairly small one, size 10, 11, and the size is at the top. See, there's size 22. Here we go. I'm going to make it about size 10, if I can get there. And then not real hard brush, so that's good. And here, drag on the photo to create a radial gradient. I don't want a radial gradient. So let me go back here. And here's drag on the photo to create a linear gradient. So you have those options. I don't want a radial or linear gradient. I just want to create this brush right here. So this is a selection, and it doesn't have to be a real exact selection. It should be fairly close. But then I'm going to color that in. And there. So all the corrections I make are going to go only to the part in red over there. So now you see all of these things that were gray before I had a selection. Now they're available and I can use those. So if I go shadows, I want to increase, and as soon as I start moving it, you see the red goes away and lets me see the effect of that. Let me turn it all the way up. So that doesn't look too bad. So what would be the other extreme if I turned it all the way down? Okay.
You just do the shadows?
I did. There we go.
The pink painting was a selection, right?
Correct.
And then now you're changing the shadows as a selection.
Yeah, yeah. But I took it back to 0, and as soon as it catches up, there you see the selection again. But that was really a real subtle, even all the way to full shadows or 0 shadows. It was a subtle selection. What if I do exposure? I bet that's going to make a bigger change. It's going to increase the exposure only in that part. Oh, there we go.
Wow.
See?
Last off.
Yeah. Okay, so if I just go up to maybe there, it's 26%. So if I go done, then it saves those changes, and there. Now, you didn't see the photo in Lightroom CC on my computer before I made all those changes, but those changes have already been synced to Lightroom. And that's what this little, you see the cloud in the upper right? If there's any activity going on, it'll be a green dot if it's syncing right now. And I can, right there, it says synced and backed up. Or I can pause the syncing if I want to turn it off just momentarily. Or for a day. You know, it's going to be paused until you turn it back on. I'll go resume syncing. Okay, but that's what that's for. And here's my share options. I can save the camera roll, save the files, and so on. Open in, edit in. What are my options to edit in? We're going to find out.
Can you sync with Lightroom mobile?
Edit in.
Is that what you think?
This is Lightroom Mobile. Yeah. When you create a selection in Lightroom CC on the computer, you choose whether or not to sync to Lightroom Mobile. There's no other choice. You can't sync it to Illustrator. You can't sync it to Photoshop. If it's synced to Lightroom Mobile. So here's my image size. I want to go maximum available, so it's rendering. And now, after I do that, what are my options to edit? I had options to open in and had options to edit in. Okay, well, if I'm going to edit this, my two options, only options, are in Photoshop Fix or Photoshop Fix. But there's two options. One, the top one says Healing in Photoshop Fix. The bottom one says Liquify in Photoshop Fix. And I don't want to do either of those. So let's go open in. And so I'll choose one, and then, so maximum available. And then it's going to be you see my other options. Here we go. Now if I want to edit in, copy to Photoshop Mix, I can. Copy to Photoshop Fix, I can. Or since Ken is here, I can tap his and send it directly to Kenneth's MacBook Pro, since he's got AirDrop turned on. Yeah. There you go. Now, anyway, you notice there was no option to share it to Lightroom CC. Why was that? It's synced, yeah. You don't. When I set up the collection in Lightroom CC, I told it, I want you to sync all changes, and you can't selectively sync one photo or two within a collection. It's all the photos in that collection or 0 of them. And there are collections that you can create that don't have any synchronization to them. I mean, it's up to you if you want to sync them or not. All right, so let's go to Photoshop Sketch, and we're not going to spend much time on that because I'm not a person to create drawings. But the first thing, this was this has Photoshop in its name, but it really doesn't have that much connection to Photoshop. It's not a photo editing program. It's a drawing tool. So if you think about this as the companion, or the not the companion, but the co-app with Draw, we already saw Adobe Illustrator Draw, the app that sends and connects, synchronizes with Illustrator CC, and creates vector images. Remember, the distinction between vector and bitmap is bitmap has pixels and so on. And although Photoshop can accept a vector image, and it'll even retain the vector properties, generally when you save a vector image from Photoshop, you're saving it as a bitmap, like a JPEG or a PNG. However, it's possible to send a vector from Photoshop to Adobe Illustrator, and all the vector properties will be maintained. So you can do with it in Illustrator just like you would in Illustrator if it was native. But the point of all that discussion was that sketch, whatever you're drawing you create, you choose a size first of all, and then you just sketch, and there, that's my drawing. And so I'll choose open in Adobe Desktop Apps, and my choices are open in Illustrator or open in Photoshop CC for whatever it is I want to do with it there. Now, since this is vector, not vector, but layered based, I can add another sketch layer to it, and I can go, that's a sketch layer, and I can change the order of these, and the order of them doesn't really matter until I do something like this. I'll mark over it, and then so it overwrote sketch layer. But if I put that back up here, wait a minute, where's my writing? I can't tell which layer my writing's on, but
Yeah, I think you may have written on one layer.
yeah, you know what, I think I did. But you get the point that you can move the layers around and work with the layers just like you would in any other application that manages layers.
You also make it visible or not visible, like the orange just make it not.
Yeah. So if I tap it again, see, I tap it once to select it, and then I tap it again to get these controls, and so I can make it opacity. So I'll turn it invisible. And the blend mode, what's the blend mode? Well, same blend modes you get in Photoshop: darken, multiply, lighten, yada yada. Transform. Transform means resizing, warp, those kind of transforms. Merge down, all your typical things that you see having to do with layers. So that's really all I wanted to do with Photoshop Sketch. Premiere Clip on here is called Adobe Clip, but then you open it and it says Adobe Premiere Clip. This is, since it's got the name Adobe Premiere in it, and Premiere is the video editing application, you would expect some connection there, and there is some connection there. You can create videos, you can combine video clips, you can apply transitions from one clip to the next, all the things that you typically do manipulating a video, you can do right here in the Adobe Clip app. Now, what this one is just a video from a bunch of photos, and so if we go here, I want to. There's a button to preview it. I want to just preview it. That's not it. There we go. Rename, duplicate, Unity, publish. Well, yeah, that's one of the effects that you see. That's the zoom effect. They don't all have to have a zoom effect. Uh, you can put music with them if you want, or not. It's up to you. This one actually has music with it, but it's turned off. Uh, so you get the idea. If I was back on the first uh, page, if I click plus, it's going to give me the option. I'll let it catch up here. There we go. Okay, so I just clicked plus to start a new project. So do I want to take video clips and photos from my iPad, which is the top option, or from Lightroom CC on the computer, or from Creative Cloud, or from Dropbox, or from, do I want to take a photo or video with my camera in the iPad? Now, the Dropbox is an option. If you don't want to connect your Dropbox account, you don't have to, but really it's a convenient place to store them. Because, and I like the Creative Cloud file sharing where I have files available throughout all my apps and my computers. But what I don't like about it is it's not everywhere. I can log into Dropbox.com wherever I'm at, even if I'm not on my own device, and I can still access my files. I can't do that with Creative Cloud files. So get the hint, Adobe, and add that feature in there, and then it'd be completely useful. But that's not a rant. I'm just saying that's a disadvantage of Creative Cloud. I still like the fact I can do that. So if I choose Lightroom, it's going to let me choose from those. In fact, let's just, I'm going to choose like 5 photos from this back. That's what happens when you get. Yep. So there we go. I'm going to just choose 5 photos here. Yep. There you go. Lady selling mangoes. Okay. So if I go open, it's going to say, do I want automatic? Yeah, I want to let Clip generate a great video for you, edited to the beats of your soundtrack. I can customize the pace, music, and order. Or I can go freeform and I can just go crazy with it and have 100% control. Okay, so there we go. So see, that's too fast. I would slow that down, but you get the point. And I'm not going to go through and do that right now, but you see what you can do with it, and really that's the point of me showing it to you now. Is you see what Adobe Clip is for. It'll do these kind of things. So the last 3 apps are called Spark, and these are the only 3 apps that I've talked about tonight. One of the apps is available on Windows Mobile. I don't know if anybody uses Windows Mobile OS. And, you got a Windows phone that uses a Windows Mobile OS. Most people don't, but it's out there. Only one app I'll talk about tonight is available on Windows OS, and that's Photoshop Express. The others are available on Apple, which is iOS, or Android. But the last 3 that I'm getting ready to talk about are Apple only, iPhones and iPads. But let me, before I get into that, let me go back to the computer and show you that, there we go here. I want to go to, all the changes I made to my, here we go. It's right here in Lightroom.com, Lightroom.adobe.com rather. And you know what? I think if you type in Lightroom.com, it'll direct to this site. So Lightroom.adobe.com. If you log into it, you have the same controls. This is almost exactly the same as Lightroom CC in the installed version. You can do the same things to your photos there. But this is Spark and spark.adobe.com. And the reason I wanted to show you the computer-based, actually it's browser-based. There is no There is now? Let me retract that maybe. I was going to say there isn't an app or an installed version. If you open the Creative Cloud app, if you don't have Creative Cloud, maybe you don't know this, but the way you get applications on your computer is you open Creative Cloud app and you see all of them listed there, and you go, okay, I want to install this one, so it installs it for you. I don't think there is one for Spark. I think you go to the website or the mobile apps. But you see right there, I'm already logged in, and so I have the option of my projects, and here's my projects, or I can browse other people's projects, or I can manage brand. And this has to do with what I mentioned earlier about those coordinated colors that the first app did, Capture. Adobe Capture will pick 5 colors for you that just go together real well and coordinate nicely, so you got a nice looking logo or website or blog or business cards or whatever it is you're doing for your business. Okay, so you choose fonts right here. You choose colors. And you choose a logo and everything right here. And when you get to the app, then on your mobile device, then all of these carry over to that. If I'm going to make a different brand, maybe for 2 different types of products, or maybe my wife's got a business or whatever, I might want to do one for her. So that's what the plus is for. And how to brand your stories is just a tutorial. And there's tutorials for everything I've covered in that. Hours and hours and hours of Adobe tutorials and videos. They're nicely done too. Not as nicely, I don't think, as the Linda ones or some of the others that you're probably familiar with. But you see, these 3 projects are projects I created to give you an idea of what these 3 apps do that I'm getting ready to show you. There's Spark Post. Spark Post is to create static, like a poster, a business card or a poster, or just a card like you mail out, that sort of thing. 1 page, maybe a brochure, but that's what Post is for. Sorry, Page, Spark Page. I'm getting the names mixed up. Spark Page does exactly that. What Spark Post does, it'll let you choose some coordinated photos or graphics or even a video clip that goes together well, and it tells a story. And you'll see an example of that here next. And then Spark Video does what you think from the name. It makes a video that coordinates your brand. So this is.
Are those 3 programs in place now? I understand that Adobe Muse has gone away, and they recommend using those programs.
Yeah, now you're right about Muse going away. These have been around for a good while. A good while meaning at least 2 years, but it could have been that plan all along. So, but yeah, there's some nice features there, and for some reason, I don't know what happened to that, but it didn't want to open up. So we're going to delete that and bring it again, bring it back. There we go. Okay. All right, they just changed it, so they want you to see what are the changes here. Animations, auto resize, some examples of things you can do with it. All right, so we're going to click out of that. And the first thing it comes to are just, it says featured up in the top left, if you can see that, featured. Okay, well, these are things that other people have done. And who doesn't like photos of cute puppies and kittens? So let's just see an example of that. Best Friends Forever, it says National Pet Day, April 1st. Okay, so that's it. That's a 1 page. It doesn't animate. It doesn't do anything. So what it said though was, well, see now I've already Yeah, I got out of it, but what it said before I clicked off of it was, click here, yeah, remix. Click here if you want to use this for your own and just change the things around a little bit. So you can start with one of theirs, the rock candy, how to make rock candy. Okay, well, all right. Protect the wild, and that's donate now to save the animals. There you go, probably not a bad cause. Can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars? Don't get that, but okay. All right, so that's it. And those are featured. Here's some examples of collages, some seasonal, some lifestyle, business, and so on and so on and so on. So here's mine, and this was one that I created just as an example, and so
That meat or chocolate?
I'm going to tell you what that is. You're not going to like the answer, but yeah, there we go. You can see a little better now. Let me just see if I can. Oh, I can't. I turned it. I don't want to turn it. I want to zoom in on it. So if I go cancel, let's cancel out of that and get out of that. Those are fish, dried fish. But wait till you see the next one on my example of Spark Page. All right, so that was just a single shot there. So Spark Page is, and again, it opens with examples. It's called Inspiration over in the bottom left. So these are some examples of what you can do with Spark Page. I've tapped Tokyo and Bloom. There we go. And as you swipe from bottom to top, you get a page of text, and now you get another photo with a caption. You get another photo, and you see there's little animation effects that bring the photo in, and so on. So that's an example of what you can do with it. Here's the example I created with it. Again, having to do with Malawi, Africa. It says Malawi is a land of contrast, and in a minute, I hope it's going to open up, because I'm seeing a full page right here, screen. So no, it's not going to go to full, which is a bummer. But okay, so I go to the next page, and you see just a collage of 3 photos. Yeah, and this one has a caption in the middle. It says young goat herders. I'm sure you can't see that well enough to read it. And this one says bicycles transport everything. And it blends into the next one. It says afternoon neighborhood. And this caption says you literally never see a man doing this, which is true. And this one says, I think she's serious. And this one says, just one happy guy.
And that was created with Spark, which one?
This is Spark Page. Yeah. And then just some nice, that's a sable, by the way. I know when you hear the word sable, you may think of a coat that PETA would want to throw paint on. But no, yeah, and another sable would be like a tiger. No, but that's an African sable right there. The horns are they get to be like 5 feet long. Really pretty animal. You know what that one is. And the lady selling mangoes, you've seen that one already. That guy's selling, you probably can't tell what those are. Those are potatoes, French fries. He's cooking them right there in the hot grease. And lettuce and tomatoes on the left if you want that with your, they call them chips. And there's the guys with fish again. And this one, can you tell what those are?
Is it mice?
Those are mice. Roasted mice. And they sell them. This was on the side of the highway. I pulled over and took that guy's picture.
Tastes like chicken.
I could not vouch for that one or the other. Don't intend to. So anyway, that's post a page runner. Sorry.
Can you make a website out? Can you export this?
Yeah.
HTML?
Let me let's go. Here's my options. If I go I can go share and copy link and copy embed code. There you go. Well, let's copy that embed code, and I'm going to go to notes, and we're going to see what that embed code looks like. You probably recognize it from these. Paste. Oops. I tried to zoom in. I couldn't. Wow. I don't know why that got so small over there. It says script type, JavaScript, Carset, slate. It's got the closing the script, embed, link. Yeah, but the links refer back to spark.adobe.com, which is what I showed you at the beginning. And in fact, let me, I'll go back there, and these things may look better from here. All right, this is rendering. Okay, got it. So, yeah, my post. So here's a nice page where you can edit it, but you can see it probably better than what you could. And then this is, let's not edit. Let's go. I want to preview. How do I preview this thing? Yeah, well, I clicked on it, so let's go page. There we go. There we go. All right, so now I can scroll through it, and you can see. Yeah. Yeah.
One page design.
Yeah, and they weren't right, so I was kind of disappointed. But anyway. All right, so the last one is Spark Video, and so let's go this one here that is for the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And this again is just as easy as those other two. You click a few buttons and bring some images in, and boom, you're there. You got your video. There we go. And you see the options on top. I can share it or I can download it. So that is it. That was Spark, and those are the ones that are iOS only. So if you're an Android person, maybe it'll come to Android someday. But for now, it's not there yet. Any last questions or anything you're just wondering about?
I wonder what Liquify meant.
For this one, there was a Liquify option
No,
here.
not here. It was a different one where you could cross adjust Liquify.
Yeah, that's in several of them. Yeah, it's in Photoshop Fix. There's that option. The option is in not Lightroom. It's not in Lightroom. We could go back to Fix and I can show you what it does. But if you were going to guess what it did, you'd guess right.
Yeah, what if I think they use that to remove the aperture to make the native eyes look a lot bigger.
Okay.
Like that.
Okay. So.
Well, yeah, looking from where you start,
Yeah.
the normal person, eye shape and size,
Yeah.
looking for it, and whoop.
So here's. Well, I don't want to mess her up. She's too pretty to mess up. So let's mess up. Let's mess up this pretty airplane, which again it goes against my grain as a pilot. But if I go to Liquify, first thing I've got the option of size. So let's just leave it right there. And options on the bottom are probably too small to read. They say warp, and then swell and twirl. And restore is grayed out for now, but it'll come visible in a minute. And then face. There aren't any faces there, so not any use in doing that. So if I just go over the top of those trees Can you see what the trees are doing? Yep. Okay. And so now let me undo that, and I'll do the same thing with swell. First, tap a spot to change the center of swelling. Okay, the propeller is a perfect spot. Drag away from the center to swell or toward the center to pucker. Oh, that'd be fun with a face. There we go. Okay. I want a little more power to get off that water. But you notice restore, well, now you see restore came back into view. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to click X to get out of that. And so you get the idea. That's what Liquify does. Yeah, you're welcome. So.
Great, trying to get rid of a little bit of fat. Somebody can just kind of like suck it in.
Yeah, that's essentially what we did when I narrowed her nose.
Yeah.
But it recognized that it was a face. And so it said, okay, choose where on the face you want to adjust. And it gave me some adjustments specific to the face. Yeah. 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 Okay.
So I know in the normal Photoshop, if we do that, watch out, recognize both eyes, and you can tell to do both at the same time on a face. You don't get one eye that's massive and the other one's like
Yeah.
the same size.
That's cool.
You can actually do them in unison, which actually helps out.
Yeah. Okay.
It recognizes the eyes. Yeah, it's at least in normal Photoshop is smart enough to. I don't know about the mobile version.
Well, I had a good time. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your attention. And come back next month and listen to Kenneth.
Thank you.